to use the breakdown. I know. I'd like to call to order, please, the Board of Education meeting for January 11th, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. This is our organizational meeting. If everyone could please rise for our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So first off, happy 2022 to everyone here and everyone watching at home. Our organizational meeting is something that happens annually, and per our bylaws and board operating procedures, we don't always have a presiding officer that can open up the meeting. So our bylaws state that we must appoint a temporary election chairperson. This person will kind of go through the motions of going through president, vice president, secretary, and treasurer. The board secretary, Susan, will tally the votes, and then the chairperson will read the votes for the record. Per OMA, there are no secret ballots. So I'd like to please entertain a motion to appoint a temporary election chairperson so we can have a discussion on this.
What? No, I'm looking at you.
Okay.
Okay.
I appoint the current president to be the presiding chairperson for elections. I nominate.
Okay, so first I think we have to have a motion. Thank you, Brad.
I motion.
Thank you.
Whatever word I have to use.
Move.
So motion, okay, so Brad motions to discuss. Michael, you second, is that what I heard?
Sure.
Okay. Yep, so I kind of explained it already. It's just the recording and kind of going through the procedure and making sure that it's audible for those at home and for the minutes. So Brad, you wanted to make a motion to just kind of keep having me roll. And I will say, I've been talking to MASB about this quite a bit, and so for your future knowledge, it can be any trustee, just so everyone knows, and it can be the superintendent as well. Okay, thank you, Brad. So you make a motion to appoint Trustee Stebbin as the temporary election chairperson.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
So that you don't tally it, you want the current secretary to?
Yeah, I spent some time reading it, and so I think, Susan, you'll do it for all, if that's okay. That the current secretary of the board tallies the votes. So you make sure you have all 7 and then kind of tally the situation and then hand it to the temporary chairperson to read for the record. Okay, motion made by Trustee Gerby. Second?
Thought we covered that. You said I would second it.
Oh, okay. That was just the first one without my name in it. Okay, all right. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries 7-0. Election of our Board of Officers. So just for those here or looking at home, each trustee has a ballot. We go in order of president, vice president, secretary, and treasurer. So the ballot for president should be on the top. That's what we'll use first. And I will call for nominations for president at this time. You can be nominated or you can self-nominate as well.
I would like to nominate Trustee Stebbin as president.
Okay, nominate me. Any other nominations for the office of president?
I would like to nominate Michael McVeigh.
Okay,
And I accept the nomination.
all right, and I accept the nomination. Any other self-nominations or any other nominations from others? Okay, all right, so if we can take our ballot, and what you're going to do is mark down either for myself or for Michael, and then we're going to fold them and hand them to Susan. Or Susan, do you want to collect them like we do the minutes?
Sure. Make sure you have your name on them, because I need to read.
Yep, it's at the bottom. Yep.
Okay. Oh, great, thanks.
Yeah, and that will be read for the record. Thank you.
Pass them down. We won't look. That would cover it. Well, you pass them to me and I'll pass them to Jennifer and she'll pass them to.
And Steve knows this, but it's the trustees only that vote. Okay. And Susan, if you're missing names on anybody, just let me know. So we'll give Susan just a minute to kind of tabulate the vote, and then I will read the results.
We should give you a tally sheet.
Well, the first position, it might take a few seconds longer, but you'll get rolling here.
Okay, so
Oh.
we,
So the chairperson reads the results. Did you tally it, though?
are you gonna read each name?
Yeah, we have to read each name for the minutes. The chair reads the names.
You just want me to pass it down?
Yeah, if you can have like the results written and tallied, and then I'll read them all. Brushing up on the Open Meetings Act before this one.
Yeah, I don't get that either. We should have some sort of an easier tally sheet.
Yeah.
For the future.
Growth mindset, living and learning. All right, thanks. Okay, I'm just gonna go in order. So we have 4 votes for trustee Stebbin, 3 votes for trustee McVeigh. I'm gonna read them in order. Order that was received. Trustee Valenti votes Stebbin. Trustee Miller votes Stebbin. Trustee Stebbin votes Stebbin. Trustee Gerby votes Stebbin. Trustee Estep votes McVeigh. Trustee Jones votes McVeigh. And trustee McVeigh votes McVeigh.
Congratulations.
All right, thank you. I'd now like to call for nominations, please, for the office of Vice President. I would like to start by nominating trustee McVeigh.
I accept the nomination.
Any other self-nominations or any nominations for others?
I would like to nominate myself.
Okay, Susan? Any other nominations? Okay. If everyone could take their ballot, please, for Vice President. Your choices are trustee McVeigh and trustee Estep. And we will do the same procedure as we did for President. That's okay, just getting used to it. Democracy in action. Steve, can you pass that down? Thanks.
When the white smoke rises.
I think that's a bad thing, isn't it?
4-3, yeah. Oh, I watched that. They're fascinating.
All right, thank you. Reading results for Vice President, we have 5 votes for trustee McVeigh and 2 votes for trustee Estep. I'll read these in the order that they were given to me. Trustee Estep votes trustee Estep. Trustee Jones votes Estep. Trustee McVeigh votes McVeigh. Trustee Valenti votes McVeigh. Trustee Miller votes McVeigh. Trustee Stebbin votes McVeigh. And Trustee Gerby votes McVeigh. Congratulations, Michael.
Thank you very much.
Let me write that down. Now we will go to the office for secretary, please. If anyone would like to self-nominate or nominate others, if you could please do so.
I would like to nominate Candace Jones.
But I wanted to nominate Candace.
I accept
Okay.
nomination.
Candace, thank you. Are there any other nominations for others or for self? Okay, seeing none, this might be an easy vote. If you could please take your ballots and vote for the office of secretary. And pass them down.
And often. Early and often.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, all three of them. Minnie Mouse.
No write-in candidates. Should be easier one. All right, thank you. We have 7 votes for Trustee Jones for the office of secretary, so let the record reflect that each trustee voted for Trustee Jones, instead of me reading all of those. Next, we have the office of treasurer. If I could get any self-nominations or any nominations from others for the office of treasurer.
I would like to nominate Trustee Gerby as treasurer.
Okay, Brad, do you accept?
Yep, thank you. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any other nominations, self or for others? Okay, seeing none, if you can use your treasurer ballot for the office of treasurer. Thank you. That is true. Thank you. The tally is 7 votes for Trustee Gerby. Congratulations on being our next treasurer. Write that down. Let the record reflect that each trustee voted for Trustee Gerby. I would like to now call for a motion to adjourn the organizational meeting of January 11th, 2022 at 6:43 p.m.
So moved.
Support.
Moved McVeigh. Second, Dennis. We are adjourned from that meeting.
Thank you for your service.
The very brief recess.
Thank you for your service, Secretary Easta.
Thank you. Thank you to everybody for last year and thank you in advance for the coming year. So we can change seats or we can just stay where we are if that's fine with everybody for this meeting. Okay? Perfect. Yeah, I looked down there. We can do it either way. I'd like to please call to order the regular Board of Education meeting for January 11th, 2022 at 6:44 p.m. We did already read our Pledge of Allegiance, so we will be moving along to our superintendent statement. Dr. Lodge.
Thank you and good evening. I'd like to take this moment to recognize our school board and School Board Recognition Month. And I have a statement to read on that. I'd like to take the opportunity to reflect on the tireless work that this school board has been doing over this past year and thank them for all of their efforts. Together, they've been instrumental in supporting the restructuring of policy, supporting student programs, and operationalizing COVID-19 protocols and procedures. I really can't think of a harder time to be a board member, but this group has been more than up for the challenge. Why? Because they are willing to put in the hard and very time-consuming work that it takes to support our students. They took a vow when they were sworn in as board members to devote their time and attention to our student body, and they have certainly done that and more. To our trustees who are in their first year, for those who have served as many as 6 years, thank you so much for what you do for our students and community. Betty Yankee has put together a nice press release, which is in front of you. I had made a copy for everybody there for you to take a look at. And also, she's coordinated some nice goodie bags to thank all of you for all of your service, and I truly mean that. You've done an outstanding job.
Thank you, Steve. And to Trustee Boatswain, who also started with us last year, and all of our past trustees. We know how hard this commitment is, so thank you, and appreciate that, Betty and Steve. Thank you very much. Moving on to public comment. A member of the public may address the board briefly for up to 3 minutes or request to be scheduled on the agenda of a future meeting. Please note that students will be given priority to speak on any topic. The first public participation portion of the meeting will be limited to 1/2 hour, 30 minutes normally, and limited to agenda items. A second public participation portion will be offered at the end of the agenda to allow for any other comment. Individuals addressing the board should take into consideration the rules of common courtesy. The public participation portion of the meeting cannot be used to make personal attacks against a board member, district employee, or student. Betty, do we have any public comment requests tonight? Okay. Seeing none from students or other stakeholders in our community, we will move on to our response to public comment. Again, happy 2022. It's been a bumpy back to school, and it might be a bumpy couple more weeks, but thank you very much for doing everything, families and staff, to keep the kids in school. We really appreciate that. Please continue to reach out to us through the Let's Talk app and sasboard@salineschools.org. I'd like to move on to our agenda, please, and entertain a motion to approve the agenda as printed. Items may be added or deleted from the meeting agenda, and/or the order of items may be changed at the request of an individual board member or the superintendent. The agendas must be approved before proceeding further. Can I entertain a motion, please?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Okay, Jenny, thank you. Second?
Second.
Candace, thank you. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries 7-0. Moving on to scheduled reports, continue to learn plan with Dr. Lech.
Okay, yeah, so tonight's Continue to Learn update is all focused around COVID-19 guidelines, changing protocols, and the attempts that the district is making to operationalize this COVID environment, keep students and staff in person, as we certainly are working through a rough patch with very high transmission in the community, the state, and across the country. So this is the latest capture from the CDC tracker. And actually, this is down a little bit, but it's still very high. I mean, you look at the number of cases in Washtenaw County, the positivity rate has dropped some, but still, close to 19% is very high. And obviously, we're paying a lot of attention to what's happening in our hospitals in regards to the number of COVID patients, which are potentially taking away from other hospital beds for other patients for various other illnesses and needs. So this is the latest from Washtenaw County. I put a few different slides that I really want to track and stress the importance of as we look at something called vulnerability level. When you look at this slide, it's comparing the largest counties in Michigan, and something that you can get, I listed the source, COVID Act Now, which we've been tracking, and that's an update from today. But you look at what is Washtenaw County is considered one of the lowest vulnerable areas in the state. And there's a number of factors that stress vulnerability. But one of the things you'll notice is a very high vaccination rate, a significant amount of testing going on, which actually indicates a lower positivity rate, people really working hard to test and identify if they do have COVID or their kids have COVID, and then doing what they can to mitigate it, not sending kids to school or not going to work in this case. So you look at this, I'm going to define a little bit more about what low vulnerability level means. On this slide, it talks about that. These are the factors that determine vulnerability. Population density, upon which Washtenaw is high, but then you look at minorities, non-English speakers, high, health system challenges, low, crowded living conditions, low, unemployment and low income, low, housing and transport challenges, very low, and older age and health issues, very low. So they're putting together all of that to determine a vulnerability level, meaning Washtenaw, even though this is a very difficult phase that we're working through, is still considered a lower vulnerable county than many in Michigan. Now, in terms of our dashboard, which has changed, we are now following the newest guidance, and we are reporting daily the number of students that are testing positive and staff that are testing positive, and the number of students that are in isolation. This looks different. Anna, our Director of Communications, has put together slides that are being updated daily to reflect this information. It does provide more real-time data for parents and our community. We also feel like it's fairly easy to read and understand as to what's happening. So, for example, I grabbed this slide from the high school today, which was updated 4. So, at the high school today, 9 new positive students are identified. 38 are in isolation, which includes those 9. Now, to put that in perspective, on Monday when we came back for break, the number of positive in isolation was 90. So, there's progress on this particular day. Again, this is ebb and flow. Same thing with positive staff. When we came back from break, we had quite a few positive staff at the high school. Today, identified 0, still have 3 that are in isolation. So I put a link on the slide, which I had shared this slideshow with all of you. It wasn't in the updated form, it is now, but if you do want to go back and look at it, you have access to the link. So why the changes for the dashboard? And I do realize that there's a lot of words on these slides. I highlighted the important talking points, but I did want this to be included too on the slideshow. So if you're going back to look at it, you're having all the information that's out there that I have also communicated in those Friday community messages too. So you look at the changes to the dashboard, and we're following this guidance largely because it was getting impossible for our nursing staff and our front office staff to keep up with reporting the close contacts. That has now changed with the guidance stating that that is not something we need to do in low-risk situations. And so the dashboard's reflective of the positive cases in isolation and won't include those in quarantine for close contact situations. In terms of that, close contact and quarantining, we're no longer requiring schools to identify close contacts and therefore those that are in quarantine. So we're largely taking the number of positive students and staff and stating how many people we have that are in quarantine based on that information, not the close contacts. Now, we talk about high-risk situations, because this is an area where we need to do close contacts. And we talk about that being our early childhood programs, where kids aren't masking, and same with certain special education program settings where kids are not masking. There also are, even though I don't have it listed there, some high-risk sports like basketball and ice hockey, where based on data from last year, those were higher spreading sports than others, the indoor sports. Oh, wrestling's included in that as well. So some people are asking, well, why is lunch considered a low-risk situation when students have masks off? That's because the Washtenaw County Health Department has looked at spread in cafeterias across Washtenaw County and has determined that still is a low-risk setting. Students are next to each other, but they're not there for very long. They're not in some sustained period. Yeah, technically they're potentially longer than 15 minutes, but they haven't been seen spread within the cafeterias, commons areas, so they've identified that as a low-risk area. We're also a wider expansion of the Test to Stay program. With that said, we were already doing the Test to Stay program before this, and it's simply expanding with more options on who can be tested so that there is better opportunity for kids to stay in school. In terms of the reduction of the isolation period, that has moved from 10 to 5 days, meaning this defines that after 5 days of symptom onset or a positive test. Now, that doesn't require a negative test necessarily to return, although recommended. The guidance is 5 days and then you're eligible to return. Now, we message that to our staff as if you are feeling well enough to do so. And that it just depends. You know, some students and or staff are feeling just fine after 5 days. Others aren't, and so just like we would with any other illness, if you are sick, unable to work, unable to come to work as a student, that you would stay home. And so we are following that guidance as well. I did make a note at the end, because some people said, well, where do you stand on masking? We're going to be continuing to mask all students in this phase that is known as severe, high, and substantial transmission phases throughout the year. That's in line with our Continue to Learn plan at the beginning of the year. However, if there were a point in this school year, let's just say in the spring, I don't know if this will happen or not, but if we were to move into the moderate or low transmission phase and be there for 14 days or longer, then the Washtenaw County Health Department is going to take away the mask mandate. We would then move to optional masking at that point if those conditions were to occur. In terms of stricter masking enforcement, in particular during this high transmissible phase with this latest variant, we are saying that we are giving an opportunity for our community to come to athletic events, but everyone needs to mask. That's a spectator. Students who are playing need to mask if they're on the bench or they're not actually in active participation during the athletic contest. And based on the varsity game that I attended for basketball last week, I felt the audience did a very nice job with that. Same with our student section. And even though we had some administrators giving reminders to students, it was more of, hey, you need to mask. If not, we're going to have you leave. So we are enforcing the masking policy at those events, because if our community is not able to do that, then we would take the next step that some other school districts are doing and saying, okay, you're limited to having 2 guests for each player. And then if we had to go to that, and that wasn't working for whatever reason, we would say no spectators. So we're trying to work together with the community to allow participation, but it does have to be under these terms right now. In terms of philosophy, so the philosophy of the district, my philosophy and those of our district administration is that we don't have plans to move to remote learning. We plan to stay in person. You look at our overall attendance rate, even during that first week coming back from winter break, we were doing fairly well with attendance, 88% for K through 8, and we were a little under 80% at the high school level. That's somewhat in line with some of the other high schools that we monitored. With that said, we're already seeing improvement in attendance rate for high school, and we're staying about the same for our K through 8 buildings. And I made a note of that here. But the feeling is in-person learning is valuable enough that we felt that as long as we can operationalize it with our staff, which we have been able to do so, at this point, we would stay in person because we didn't want to send students home for virtual instruction, as the belief is that we need to develop the consistency of being in person and stay in person. Now, what are some metrics that we would consider going remote short term? This is connected to our staffing model. And there is a scenario where we can't operate the district. And that scenario would be so many teachers and paraeducators out, or, well, with bus drivers, we would just cancel routes. But the scenario for not operating school would be one in which we had deemed that there were too many teachers and paras out that we couldn't cover the gaps internally. And we do not have any plans for that to be happening right now, because we've already been covering this past week, this current week, and our staff is really collaborating well to make it happen. However, we do want to prepare in case there was a scenario down the road that we did need to move the district virtual at the secondary level for a day here or there. So I did gather some data, because people are going to say, well, what's that trigger point that might have you need to go to virtual instruction at the secondary level? So if you analyze this chart, this is where we were at last week, and this is where we are at this week, which is updated. So this is in Red Rover, which is the absence management software that Assistant Superintendent Ellis has put together, and it does track all of this information. So if we just start at the top, on January 3rd, we had, if you go all the way to the right, we had 72 total staff members out. Now, I do want to point out that the rest of those numbers don't add up to 72, because that includes literacy tutors, transportation department. I was only showing the unfilled absences for paras and teachers, which I want to go over, because those are some primarily key areas that may make us say, okay, can't operate the district for a day or two. So, but if you look here, we had 72 total staff, but out on January 3rd. Now, perspective is that we have over 600 staff members. For paras, we had, on that Monday coming back, 13 unfilled for paras and 9 unfilled teachers. We had 4 filled paras, meaning they had subs, and 18 teachers that had subs. And then if you look down, you're going to see that same pattern, that we are filling a lot of the teacher absences, less so for our paras, which means with paras, our special education directors, they need to scramble to kind of move things around so that we can operate on those days, and they've been doing a terrific job to make that happen. With the teachers, when we have unfilled spots, which you'll see, you know, if you looked at that average there, we're probably averaging around 7 or 8 teachers unfilled every day. However, building administration has done a great job of matrixing out so that teachers are substituting for other teachers on their planning periods. And they are getting paid an agreed $50 an hour to help with that, which is good. Something that Assistant Superintendent Ellis helped negotiate to up that rate for our teachers to do that. And they've been doing a great job helping with that. Administrators are helping during those spots as well. Now, this is what we consider we can staff the district with this model. So you look at how many people have been out. You look at how many teachers are out, how many pairs are out. We're doing fine with this. But let's just say there is a day upcoming that we're recognizing that, wow, we're going to have 22 unfilled teacher absences. We might say, we don't think we can operationalize the next day. Therefore, let's say that happens on a Friday. We're recognizing there's a Friday. We would say, on that Thursday, we would contact families and say, we are going to switch and have our secondary-only students go virtual for the day, allowing us to shift the additional support of our administration from the secondary level and any additional staff that may not need to be working with students, paraeducators, literacy tutors, over to the elementary so we can continue to operate the elementary in person. And that is what you would see in that scenario. Again, no plans for that, but we want to be prepared to pivot quickly if we did need to do that, which is why this Friday, it's a whole day off for students instead of a half day so that our staff can have a half day of preparation in the scenario that we had to pivot quickly to move secondary virtual and elementary to stay in person. Again, no plans of doing that because we're moving through some really hard times right now and we're doing fine with that, but we want to be better prepared. What would be a scenario where we would go virtual longer term? More or less, if we felt that we were ever in a spot where we were going to be at below 75% attendance rate, which means you can't count the day, then we would consider a longer term move. If we felt like that was coming anytime soon, which we don't, we would reevaluate the model that we had going for sort of that short-term virtual instruction. This would have to be a different conversation. Again, no plans for this, and we don't see this happening anytime soon, but we will be ready, if we have to talk about a longer-term shift, which would then be distribution of devices to elementary students and preparation for parents. That's a big deal at the elementary level. Very hard to do virtual instruction without the parent support. It's also why we think it's much easier to shift and better to just secondary going virtual and elementary staying in person. I already talked about this prep day, but that's the purpose of it. We already had an early release day where the teachers are going to do professional development in the morning, and that professional development is around culturally responsive instruction for our entire staff, or our entire teaching staff. And then the second part of the day is planning for our teachers in the event of, well, preparing for the possibility of ever having to go for a virtual day, which again, we don't anticipate happening. And I think that is the end of the presentation. So what kinds of questions do people have? Brad?
Yeah, I have a couple. So this might be a question more for Assistant Superintendent Ellis. Can you give me some idea? You showed us that slide. Can you go over to the teacher / para absence slide?
Oh, sorry.
Can you give me some idea of how above or below average those numbers are?
Kurt maybe probably can do better about that.
Talking to our peers, I think those numbers are very similar to the teachers. The paras are probably a little higher than our peers, and it has to do with how we use the system. We've got some para positions that we've not been able to fill on a permanent basis, and so we enter what's called a supplemental position in. vacancy that we have. Those positions largely go unfilled right now, and so our numbers for the paras are a little bit inflated because of that. But in terms of what we're seeing, for peer districts around the county and whatnot, these numbers are very similar. Everybody's dealing with the same challenges and the same problems.
But I also meant, like, compared to a normal first week and a half in January, 'cause I'm sure we have absences anyway due to normal sickness and,
Actually,
cold and flu and that kind of thing.
Generally, coming back from a break, our attendance is exemplary because we have some incentives in our contracts that make the attendance be tied to holiday pay. Certainly in this case, with some of the COVID diagnoses and whatnot, that was a little bit more. So this would be a really anomalous type year.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But I'll give you a comparison point. Thank you, Kurt, for that. A comparison point would be that at the high school, we've been tracking attendance, and we've this week, we've been averaging 300 students out, with about 1,700 in the high school. A normal day is about 180. So we're not so far inflated. So I guess what I would say is that's probably in line with our teachers as well. You look at there still are subs out every year. And throughout this whole year, we have still been dealing with unfilled positions and operating where other teachers are covering for teachers and paras and all of that. So that's not different after winter break. There's just more of it. And that's why we talk about, is there a scenario down the road where there's another variant and it's increasing absences even more than we're expecting? We just want to be ready for that situation. But again, we're expecting this to improve over the next few weeks and months. Will we see another spike after spring break? Maybe. I mean, that's where some of this is occurring, right? We're off. People are out in the community, not masking, getting together. That's, well, I don't want to say clearly, but it appears that's what happened after this winter break. Will that same thing happen after spring break? There was some of that last year. Now there's more people vaccinated. The weather's warmer. We just don't know for sure, and so we're trying to get prepared for a number of different scenarios. Other questions that people have?
I just had a very quick question. You had mentioned that some of the special needs students were unmasked. That's the students who are going unmasked, not their teachers, correct?
Correct, yeah.
Awesome.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
The students themselves, because in their IEP, they can't tolerate a mask, and that's right. And for the younger ones, they're so young that that, along with not being able to tolerate a mask, is the early childhood piece.
Okay,
So not all are unmasked, I guess is what I'm saying, even in that environment.
I got that. Thank you.
Sure.
Steve, I had a question about the reduction to 5 days quarantine. Do you think, you talk to the health department all the time and Karen all the time, do you think it's something that we would go back to 10? And the reduction in quarantine days is just related to this particular variant, or are they kind of talking now about this will become the norm, 5 days? And I appreciate what you said about being flexible with individuals, that some are definitely ready to go back after 5 days and some aren't, with regards to staff and students, and we respect that.
I do think it's more of a reflection of the operationalizing the pandemic, that not only for school, but the notion that businesses are struggling to keep up if their employees are out for 10 days. And, hopefully the data is there that shows that after 5 days, you're not going back in and spreading it. Now, they're saying that, when you come back, you got to be wearing masks, which we're doing anyway. So, I really do think it's, I guess I'd say, here to stay, that it's 5 days. But then again, guidance keeps changing on a regular basis, so if it moves to some other number, we'll have to be ready for that. Okay, Jenny?
I heard in your presentation and had read about the incentive for teachers as they're covering during their planning times, and I appreciate that's being recognized as something that should be, I guess, that teachers should be paid for that. And I also have seen, where principals are serving food in the cafeteria and all of these things. So I just wonder what impact that's having on the daily learning experiences of students. When a teacher is out 5 days, are we making an effort to, instead of having 5 different teachers in there during the day, are we making an effort to maybe not have that class be the piecemeal class every day? And how are we supporting our teachers and administrators as they are spreading themselves more thinly, I guess? Because I know missing your planning period, although it's nice to be compensated for that, it also can impact, your daily work and the energy and ability that you have with students.
Yeah, well, the first thing is, so Assistant Superintendent Ellis, as we've gone through that, it's certainly an ask. In other words, we're not forcing any teachers to do the coverage. And that what has happened, and this is an analysis that Kurt has done, is, out of our teachers, it usually is around like 30% of the teaching staff that's doing the subbing. A lot of those teachers have kind of worked it in. Maybe this is, some of our newer teachers that are saying, well, that's some extra income for me. They're okay with doing that. So it's not some sort of rotation system where we're forcing teachers that absolutely don't want to do that because they feel like they can't give up their planning time. So I do think it's that voluntary piece that is helping it work. And in terms of supporting our administrators, we do the best to get in the buildings and help. We do the best we can to help identify where the needs are. Kurt's moved our premier subs that they sub every day in the district or whatever position to have priority at the elementary grades first, because it is harder to work the elementary schedule when teachers are subbing for each other. It is easier to do a clean break at the high school, for example. First period at the high school, there may be 15 or 16 teachers that are on a planning period at that time. At the elementary level, the schedule's all choppy. It's a lot harder to figure out how to get sub coverage internally. So we do feel like we're doing as much as we can to support it.
And then in terms of the student experience, is there a situation where, like, for example, I'm just going to say, like, in 3rd grade, a 3rd grade teacher has to be out for 5 days because of a positive COVID test. Is there an effort to get a consistent person in that position rather than having a rotating, 4 or 5 people in that classroom for 5 days?
Yeah, I mean, there is an effort, but there is no question that, it's volatile when there's patterns, and then there's a lot of the night before a bunch of absences are coming in, sometimes the morning of, so it's not as easy to plan for that as if we knew specifically, like, hey, I don't know, we got 18 teachers that are going to be out for the next 5 days, and 10 are covered, and we know we got to, cover for these 8. Planning for that kind of scenario is much easier than the live, we're calling in sick, and now we're trying to cover. So we're doing the best we can to maintain some consistency, but there is no question. I mean, I did hear from a few high school parents who said, my child had 3 different teachers on a particular day when we came back for winter break. Again, that, we're doing the best we can to operationalize it.
Yeah, no, that happened at our house. I do appreciate the fact that the premier subs are being focused when possible to the elementary level, because I think the consistency and familiarity and all of those pieces play a greater role there. So I appreciate that that's happening there. At the high school, like you said, last week Drew had 3 subs one day, but 2 were regular, and the subs were people who were familiar to him, and so he could roll with it. His teachers had video lessons. Like, I think everyone's doing the best they can, and so I appreciate the work that our teachers are doing and the people who are stepping up to sub, and that we're expediting some of those systems so that people who have the ability to sub can be available to us. So I don't want it to appear that I'm not grateful for that. I am thankful for all that's being done by our entire staff, and to those teachers who are stepping up and filling those voids when they can. We thank you, and for those who can't do that, that's recognized too, that teaching is more difficult than it has ever been in the 20 years that I've been in education. So thank you.
Yeah, sure. Susan?
Have we reached out to any retired teachers? Is that even a resource?
Well, Kurt has been working on some of the different strategies to get some substitutes in. Do you want to comment on, I mean, we're certainly trying. Susan and then Candace.
Can you kind of explain with like the prep hour and what a day would look like with an unfilled substitute for a classroom, like the third grade classroom, and what that would look like, how many teachers are coming in and out of there?
Sure. At a third grade, I guess I would say that could be up to 4 or 5 different breaks. The elementary schedule goes where, you know, there might be a block of time in the morning, start around 9 o'clock, and then let's say you go till 10:15 to, then you go to your specials class. That first block could potentially have 2 different teachers and or administrator in there. Then they'll go to specials and potentially get their normal teacher that's in that day. They have lunch worked in there. Then there are gaps of time where you're trying to fit in, whether it's an administrator covering or another teacher. So there's no question that on a given day for an elementary student, there could be 4 or 5 different people in there. I think it's what Jenny was talking about, that it is choppy on a day like that. At the same time, we want them to have an instructor. And so we are, and when we're doing that, for the most part, it's, now there's new substitute language on, you know, highly qualified and being able to teach in that regard. But for the most part, we have those highly qualified people in there that are helping out, especially whether it's teachers. The administrators that I know that are in there have kept up with their teaching certification so that they're able to help administer lesson plans. And so from my experience of being in there and seeing that, yep, it is a little bit of a lot of different teachers potentially in there. But because of the way the teachers that are out have set up their classroom routines, generally the kids know how to follow those regardless of who's instructing it. I mean, they're having reading at the same time or math at the same time. And so as students throughout the year have gotten used to those routines, even though somebody else is delivering the instruction, they know what to do. I'll give you an example. At the high school, I subbed in a chemistry class. The students knew what to do. And we did an experiment with Bunsen burners and everything. And the students knew all of the procedures. So I feel like that's the case even at the elementary, even though it could involve multiple instructors.
Well, and if I could add, Susan, that model for covering for an absence is not new, but the compensation is new. So I do appreciate that because there probably is more coverage happening now, and because it is ongoing, this situation is ongoing, that I think the compensation, I think, shows some appreciation to our staff who is doing that. But the coverage during our planning time was something that was happening when I was here pre-pandemic.
So I had another question about staffing, and recently, and maybe Kurt can ask this, with the legislation and the governor signing a bill that allows staff to fill in without so many requirements. So I don't know if there's been any movement on that.
Yeah, Kurt's talking about.
It's a lot more difficult to operationalize than it might appear. If you think about the way the school day looks and say, okay, we could have a bus driver that might be able to fill in after they do their route. The route is done long after school has started. By the time they get back, park the bus and whatnot. And the same thing happens at the end of the day. And that same dynamic occurs with just about every far as actually being able to sub in a classroom, it's a pretty difficult model to pull off for the bulk of our staff.
Okay. And I had, I think, one more question. So I read an article where you had mentioned that you're working with the unions, and so I just wanted to, I guess, ask you about that as far as the support and everything.
I think that was referring to the January 14th Professional Development Day that we had talked about agreement in that allowing a little bit of additional prep time for that potential of ever having to do a virtual day. And that we worked with the union to more or less, to agree that that's the model we would move to if we ever got in a spot that we wouldn't be able to operationalize the district for any specific day. That's what that, I believe, was.
Yeah, I didn't know if like numbers in the class was,
Yeah, it wasn't really
issues
about
and-
numbers in the class. It was more that we needed to make sure that they were on the same page with if we had to go virtual, we have agreed upon the model, and that was that secondary would go virtual and that elementary would stay in person. And that also includes in-person CTE programs and a young adult program on any of those specific days. Again, no plans for that to happen. This is a contingency plan if it ever develops in the future.
So in situations that, for example, a teacher having 70 kids for multiple days, I don't know if that's okay with the union. Do you all communicate like one-on-one with that, or?
Well, we would, even on you're talking about if we went to one of these virtual days, right?
No, in person.
We don't know a scenario that we've been doing that.
Summit learning.
Oh, and Summit, okay, or, yeah, we have done some double classrooms, that's true. Yes, they do know that that could take place, and then that teacher is still being compensated for that. But that's not happening on a regular basis, but I do know what you mean by that.
It's happening on a regular basis with my son.
Candace, do you have questions?
Yes, I do. So I know you're very optimistic and would like to keep us in person, which is great. But if we do need to go virtual for any reason, if we start to get below that 75% attendance or for any reason, are there any new strategies that you're considering for engagement of students in virtual learning? I know there's some concern in the community about the challenge of virtual learning and last time around. So I know it may be a day here or there, but if there is a scenario where it has to be a week or longer, are there any new approaches that you all are thinking about?
Well, I think one thing we do have in our back pocket is that we've learned from a year of virtual and hybrid instruction what strategies work better than others. Therefore, our teaching and learning team is on hand to help with if we had to make that transition, if we had to help teachers with more of a template of a lesson plan to generate more engagement. We feel more confident this year in doing that. With that said, if we have to make that quick pivot move, we want to make sure that the expectations are already laid out for our secondary students in particular, because if we had to make that move, we would not want the kids to be finding out about it that morning and saying, I don't know how to access the Zoom link. Where is my Google Classroom material? Where, how do I do this lesson? That conversation is something that will take place on Friday with our teaching staff when they have some prep time to say, make sure your class understands how we would operationalize it for even things like taking attendance. The kids need to be live on Zoom for that to happen. So if we have a situation where that can't happen for a student, we need to know how to approach that, and I'm confident that our staff can work through that.
Thank you.
Sure. Other questions?
One last question. We've heard of districts around the country who have utilized this move to virtual for non-pandemic school cancellations. Is there any talk of utilizing this shift for snow days or other reasons why school would be canceled?
Not snow days at this point. I do know other states are doing that. Indiana's now operationalized that, where they say that if there's a snow day, they need to have that plan ready to go so that they can count that day. Michigan at this point is still treating snow days or inclement weather days as, a break for the students. So at this point, that's still in order.
Great. My 2 high school kids will be glad to hear that. Thank you.
Sure.
I think I just heard students cheering watching that.
I'm sure that, yeah.
And now it's on video, so we have
They'd be happy about that, right?
Right. All right. Any other questions or comments for Steve? Right. And thank you also. I know that you are still certified, and I know that you've been teaching as well. Appreciate you and all of the staff who are really pitching in, both in the classroom, on buses, and all sorts of capacities, food service. You showed a picture of Laura there in the middle school cafeteria the other day. Thank you very much. Moving on, we have a couple of action items. The first is a recommended motion, please, to approve the minutes from the December 14th, 2021 closed session for the purpose of collective bargaining. Can I have someone make a motion?
I make the motion.
Okay, Brad, thank you. Second? Support. All right, supported by Michael. Thank you very much. Just so everyone, although we have had some closed sessions lately, just so everyone knows our procedure, Susan has graciously offered to arrange our closed session minutes. She'll be passing those out to all 7 trustees. We'll take a moment to just read and reflect on those. She will collect them, tabulate all 7, and make sure that they are returned to her. We will vote on them, and then 1 copy goes in a sealed envelope with Betty Yankee to be kept on file. Thank you, Susan. If you can pass that out.
President Stebbin, I do have a question about that. Because I was ill and not at the meeting, so I was not in the closed session, I would not be able to reflect on the minutes. So I would abstain today?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Jenny, and thank you for reminding me that you were absent that day. Sounds good. Thank you.
I'm confused about that, because we approve minutes anytime with consent agenda and stuff, so if you're not with that, I don't understand.
Yeah, I think, and Jenny, I don't want to speak for you, but one difference is we record the meeting, so I know, for example, I missed 1 meeting last year, so I was able to go back and watch that and be prepared to approve the minutes in the next meeting. With closed session, she was not able to participate in that. So I think that that's probably the reason, but.
Yeah. That's exactly it. I wouldn't be able to read the minutes and verify that it was an accurate recount, record of the day. So I wouldn't feel comfortable voting that way.
Okay, then I'm shredding an extra copy.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I think it goes back to, Jenny, to something we previously said, that sometimes absences do have to occur, and we carry on with the business of the district, so thank you. Okay, when everyone's read them, just turn them back into Susan.
We're going to be naughty and pass them.
I'm not looking. It's the same thing.
That's all.
Well, I'm
Well, you should count.
counting them in order. Thanks.
Yep, so Susan, I'll just verify she has 6 back.
I have 6 here, an extra copy that will be shredded with those, and envelope for the office.
Okay, sounds good. Brad made the motion, Michael did second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstain?
Aye.
All right. So we have 6-4-0 against, 1 abstain. Motion passes. I'd like to now please entertain a motion to appoint the board's recording secretary, Betty Yankee, Candace Jones, our board secretary, and our superintendent, Dr. Steve Lodge, to serve as the board's designees for posting legal notices. Michael moved.
Support? Oh, go ahead.
Dennis? Dennis support. I don't think we need any discussion, but does anybody have any questions on that? Okay, perfect. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries 7-0. We have no discussion items on our agenda for this evening, so we will move on to administration and board updates. Dr. Lodge.
Okay, I have 3 of them. I'd like to invite everybody to the Safety and Security Community Forum. And our agenda, and this takes place on January 20th here in the Liberty Board of Ed room from 6:30 to 8 p.m. It'll be led by Carol Melcher, Kurt Ellis, and myself. And our agenda is such that we're going to be working with Saline PD and Pittsfield Township representatives who are going to talk about our school resource officer and the jurisdiction arrangement of trying to make the flow between Pittsfield and Saline be better and more cohesive, as we do have schools that are in both jurisdictions. And there'll be conversation around that. It will include the school safety and security presentation that we did for the Board of Education the other day, and it will include some small group discussion, spaced appropriately, with a series of 3 questions to engage the public in some of the things we're wondering about, social emotional health of our students and so forth, and plans for doing security drills. So we do encourage attendance there, 6:30 to 8 p.m. on January 20th. Also do want to reiterate that we do have no school on January 14th. I know that was sort of a long-winded message, or no school for students, a long-winded message that came out from me because there was a lot of different layers of COVID protocols in there. So Anna and the district principals are pushing out on social media to make sure that families know that, this moves from an early release day to no school on that day. And then that will continue, not having school on January 17th. That's MLK Junior Day, which gives us all a chance to observe and remember the work that Martin Luther King Jr. did to help better support diversity, equity, and inclusion in the various buildings and teachers' classrooms. We do have some activities planned in anticipation of this day. I also want to make sure that the public, and we're also promoting this on social media, if you haven't been to the Remembrance Day that takes place every Martin Luther King Jr. Day at U of M's campus at Hill Auditorium, it's really an excellent event. This year, it's This Is America, 10 a.m. on January 17th at Hill Auditorium on U of M's campus. We will be advertising that broadly, as it's really, it's always a well-attended event and also very well done. And then finally, just thank you again for the flexibility and support that everyone is demonstrating with this latest variant. It's another example of being really impressed with everybody, our students, staff, and community. Let's just keep moving forward together.
Thanks, Steve. Moving on to board updates, Julian is not with us tonight. He has a game, so we wish him and his teammates the best of luck. Go Hornets. Any trustees who would like to do a board update? Yes. Okay, Michael?
Thanks. I have a few things. The National School Boards Association was or is still having their Advocacy Week in DC, January 23rd, 4th, 5th. But with the rise of Omicron, I decided to give it a pass, so I've canceled my ticket. And we'll be doing it virtually. We're still planning a virtual meeting with Senators Stabenow and Peters, but I'm going to miss being in the really cool room in the Senate offices for that. January 24th is our legislative coffee. Just a reminder to my fellow board members. We have state and senators and representatives in attendance, and often a congressperson, often from Congressman Dingell's office, pops in, and sometimes the congressperson herself. And I'm sure we're going to be discussing this Friday's Consensus Revenue Estimating Conference, which is going to be, well, is it this Friday? It's this Friday. Thank you. Also, I just wanted to say that this morning, Trustee Eastep and I attended the Culturally Responsive Instruction session with Shannon Washington. And just a reminder, there are going to be 2 more of those, and I hope to see members of the community there and perhaps other board members. And finally, I will be attending the ribbon cutting at High Point School on Thursday. I hope to see some of my colleagues there as well. It's they've put a lot of effort and energy into upgrading that school. The pictures I've seen, it looks fantastic. And I'm looking forward to the tour and the ribbon cutting itself on Thursday. There's an invitation in front of you.
Not a wedding?
Not a wedding, Treasurer Gerby. Sorry, I know you were so excited for a moment there.
Maybe not right now.
Thank you. That's it for me.
All right, thanks, Michael. Any other trustee comments? Susan, yeah?
Michael shared all of mine, but I'm kidding.
I retract everything I said. Go.
Oh, I'm going to share one for you. So yes, I did attend the Culturally Responsive Instruction Parent Series, Part 2, and Shannon Washington was able to, well, didn't get through all of it because there were so many questions from Part 1 that she answered, and so it was really great and informative. And she pulled out a lot of, matched it up to board policy and, some state and government law and our goals and strategic plans that align with the things that we are doing through that. Let's see. December 20th, Vice President McVeigh and I attended the City of Saline Council meeting and voiced our support for establishing a new school zone on Woodland Drive, and specifically the location being, oh my gosh, I can't think of the name, Trail. Woodland Drive. Yeah, I can't think of the name of the entrance.
Wildwood Trail. Sorry.
Yes, thank you. Hopefully with reducing a speed limit and encouraging the installation of flashing lights, and the city passed that, so I'm super excited about that for the families who have, reached out to the board and the city council, and especially the city staff who have come in and have been researching that and will be working on this soon. So I'm super excited about that. I also will be attending the ribbon cutting, and I'm hoping there's massive scissors because I want to hold them. Stay tuned.
That sounds a little dangerous.
Could I please, Trustee Eastep, if I can add on to that about the crosswalk, a shout out to our local parent, Justin Teams, for really spearheading that. I absolutely appreciate that, and I heard the phrase squeaky wheel, and it really got under my skin. These are parents who are seeing a serious issue, brought it to the attention of the people who are in a position to make a difference, and I absolutely appreciate everything that everyone in that community has done, and thank you to you, thank you to Dr. Lotch, thank you to the City Council and Colleen, whose last name escapes me. O'Toole, thank you. Colleen O'Toole and everybody else, and the police department. They've all been fantastic, so thank you. Thanks for coming to that.
Yeah, great. Appreciate that. I personally felt that was needed as well, so I appreciate both of you going. Yeah, Dennis.
Yes, I guess this would probably be the appropriate time in the meeting to, I'd like to just read a statement. In 2015, some community members asked if I would be interested in filling a vacancy on this board. At that time, I had just served 10 years as a trustee of the Foundation for Saline Area Schools. So that, together with my law and finance background, I thought I could contribute. It has been my honor to serve this community for the last 6.5 years as trustee of the Board of Education. However, as the saying goes, there's a time for all seasons, and I believe it is time now for me to step down as trustee to allow someone else the opportunity to serve. Yeah, my first experience with Saline schools goes all the way back to the middle of my high school years, when I was transported from the suburbs of Oakland County to Saline. As you can imagine, that was a bit of an adjustment for me, but it was one that was made much easier to the thanks of two teachers in particular, one Coach Crabtree, the other teacher, Miss Cheryl Heft. It was their kindness that made me feel that someone cared about me personally. And I mentioned them because I want to remind all of us and applaud all the educators here of just how important that teacher-student relationship is and how it's long-lasting. But effective at the close of this meeting, I will be submitting my resignation as trustee of the Board of Education for Saline Area Schools. I sincerely wish to thank the community for allowing me to serve for these past 6.5 years. I wish the best to all of you and to my alma mater. But as I said earlier, there's a time for all seasons, and I believe it's now time for me to find some other less time-intensive avenue for me to contribute to my community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dennis, I need just a minute, but, so I'm sad, but it's been my absolute pleasure to serve with you the past 3 years, and serve with you on finance for 3 years. You are a critical thinker, you are fair, but most of all, you're a really good person. And so I appreciate you.
Thank you all.
Thank you. I'm sure other trustees might like to say something. Go ahead.
I'm tearing up over here. Yeah, I haven't had a chance to work with you very long, but I just appreciate the knowledge that you bring, the measured approach that you have to this work, and I was really looking forward to, one more year of working with you, so I'm sad to see you go, but stay in touch, neighbor. Okay. Thank you.
Finishing up my first year and now entering into my second year, your presence on the board has been a steady anchor for me in this first year. And I have appreciated the wisdom and knowledge that you have shared with us. And even when we didn't see eye to eye, the conversations that we had after just allowed me to know that we were all on the same team and a collaborative effort with students at the forefront of our mind every day. And I know that you have additional family members now in the last year, and I'm sure that that's a piece of that. And I just want to acknowledge that the time that we have spent on the board, the intensive time that we've spent on the board over the last year, I completely understand why this might be a time that you're seeking out something that is a little less, taking a little less time and maybe adding a little more time to that little granddaughter. So thank you for your service. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I obviously want to say my thanks. Dennis, I've learned so much from you, right? You've taken the time to teach me. You've taken the time to mentor. You've taken the time to just spend with me. And I will tell you, I'm a better board member today than I was a year ago because of your tutelage and because of the time that you invested in me. And yeah, I'll miss you, man. I thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
That was a surprise to me. And just want to say congratulations, and thank you for always being respectful, professional towards me, and I wish you the best. And yeah, thanks again for serving.
Well, I don't know how to follow that, but Dennis, I hope that, I hope you hear the love in our voices and the respect and the admiration that not just us, but many, many in this community have for you. My day just changed tomorrow, so I'll be doing a few things tomorrow and be in touch with you guys. But I'm sure I'll have more eloquent things to say once I think on this a little bit, and I'll probably call you tomorrow. But thank you from the bottom of mine and a lot of other people's hearts. You've been really instrumental in the community for a very long time, and I'm sure the foundation would say the same thing. Thank you. I'll just keep running with my comments. Speaking of the foundation, and I'm sure you'll hear from Amherst tomorrow. We had our Foundation for Saline Area Schools Committee meeting today, so I wanted to provide 4 updates from that. We are getting ready for our Saline Alumni basketball game against Tecumseh. They would very much like people to play. It is February 26th at 5 p.m. at Saline Middle. We are hosting, so if you know anyone, and Dennis, you just said you were an alum and reminded me. So guess what your first thing is going to be? You're tall. I mean, I didn't think about that when I wrote these comments, but you could play basketball, so please talk to Amherst. He'll do just fine. Play basketball. Also in late March, Dr. Lodge and Amherst are organizing our Superintendent Circle Dinner. That's for families in our community that have given $1,000 or more to the Foundation for Saline Area Schools. And if Amherst was here, she would say there is still time to contribute if you would like to participate in the Superintendent Circle Dinner. We are also preparing for our spring event at Imagine Theater. That will be April 28th. It will also include a live auction. I hear good things about a Lake Michigan stay and matching hers, Shinola watches. So lots of good things going on there. This will be the big spring event. We will not be having snow blasts this year out of the abundance of caution due to COVID. Usually that is held in February and has about 400 people at it. So the decision was made by their trustees to focus on the spring event on April 28th. I also wanted to mention that $53,000 was approved today in grants to our buildings and our staff, so thank you. That puts our grant spend at $102,000 so far this year, and we have about $23,000 left if staff would like to send those into the foundation. The only other update that I personally had is I'll be competing in the Senior Center Soup Fundraiser. So if anyone is feeling cookie and wants to join me and create soup to raise money for our senior center, it will be on February 8th from 11 to 1. And if you don't want to cook, you can still come out and support our seniors. And I'm told that Chief Heft always brings the chili to this, so I'm feeling a little nervous and would appreciate your support, or if you want to compete against me too. So that's all from me. Any other trustee updates? Okay, that was a lot. Moving on to our consent agenda. The following are offered as part of the consent agenda. The motion noted will allow for the authorization of all listed items without discussion unless a member of the board requests that any one or all be considered individually. I'd like to please entertain a motion to authorize the following items as part of our consent agenda. A, approval of the regular Board of Education meeting minutes for December 14th, 2021. B, approval of the Board Finance Committee meeting minutes of December 14th, 2021. C, approval of payment of the general fund accounts payable of January 11th, 2022 in the amount of $3,760,993.59. D, approval of payment of bond fund series 3 accounts payable of January 11th, 2022 in the amount of $94,278.54. E, receive and file curriculum, finance, and human resources reports. F, approval of the early graduation request as submitted by Superintendent Lodge. G, approval of overnight and/or out-of-state field trips as submitted by Superintendent Lodge. Item number 1, field trip 2021, number 64, FCCLA, Valley Plaza Resort, Midland, Michigan. May I please entertain that motion? Michael, thank you. Jenny, second?
That was my voice.
Oh, that was Susan. Okay. We're sitting a little different. I'm not used to Dennis being over there and Candace being over there, and Susan being further away. Susan, thank you. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries 7-0. Let's see. We're going this way. Items scheduled on our next agenda. Dr. Lodge?
Continue to learn plan.
Popular favorite. Thank you. A member, this is an opportunity for our second public comment. A member of the public may address the board briefly for up to 3 minutes or request to be scheduled on the agenda of a future meeting. Betty anticipated me. Thank you so much. I am seeing no yellow forms, so we have no student public comment, so we'll call Megan Gunnarsson to the podium. Megan, if you could please toggle the mic on before you speak, that would be great. And because you're our first public commenter tonight, our regular procedure is, Candace, do you have them or does Susan? Okay. Secretary Jones will show a yellow card when you have 30 seconds left of the 3 minutes, and then a red card at the completion of the 3 minutes so you can complete your thought.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Great. Thanks for the opportunity. First of all, Mr. Valenti, I'm so sad to see you go. But I wish you well in whatever brings you happiness in the future. I had emailed some of you this week because I still came to you 7 months ago with some concerns about return to learn, and I still have some reservations, probably because I have twice the average of the U.S. family size. And so I have my own control group for virtual learning and in-person and hybrid. I am thankful for your dashboard that gets updated daily. I would give feedback that it would be really helpful as a numbers girl to know how many people are actually in the district, like how many students you have. The only information posted online comes from a national center, and I don't think that it's accurate because it shows you have no pre-K teachers and that you only have 300 people as staff. I had asked for that information actually in August and was told to FOIA it. I find FOIAing actually quite adversarial. I know that it has made a ton of headlines in the last couple months. I would respectfully ask you again, either provide it publicly or update your own website so people know. It's also helpful to know how many staff you have. When you see 72 people are out, you're like, oh my gosh, but then when you know that there's over 600, it's 12%, that's a lot, but that doesn't look as ugly as you have 73 absences today. So once again, I'm not gonna FOIA something. I think that that's ridiculous. This is public knowledge and it should be something that your parents and your students should have access to. That being said, I have children at different levels. All of mine are in the secondary, and so I appreciate that all these little people need to learn, and they need to learn to read, and that as a working mom, it's a lot more cumbersome for me to figure it out if I had a third grader versus a sixth grader. But my sixth grader being in the classroom is just as important as when she was in the third grade. So I would just ask you, as you're moving to this virtual model, to please remember that this 6 to 12 group they have high stakes too, and I just would like for them not to keep being well, they can do it themselves. Some of them can't, and some of us aren't home. And I want to thank you for not grabbing onto the panic and sending the kids home. They need to be in school, and I'm so thankful. I can't believe I'm crying. I'm so thankful that you guys recognize that and kept them there, at least this week. And I want to say thank you. And then the last thing is, could you please lighten up about the sports? Like, just ask the kids who aren't participating to leave. Don't shut it back down. These kids haven't had a normal year. I have a senior this year. She hasn't had a normal year since her freshman year. She's not even going to the game. I don't have a kid playing. I'm just saying, take a breath. Understand that this is one of the minor things that they can do together, and just let them go to the games with their parents. And if you have to ask them to leave, ask the offenders to leave. Don't kick them all out. It's not fair. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Our next meeting, the next Board of Education meeting, will be held on January 25th, 2022 at 6:30 PM. I'd like to please entertain a motion to adjourn the regular Board of Education meeting for January 11th, 2022 at 8:00 PM on the nose.
So moved.
Dennis, thank you. Second?
Support. Susan?
Susan, I don't know why sorry about that.
I'm like double.
I hope my ears aren't clogged.
I'm double masked.
Oh, okay,
yeah.
that could be it. Thank you, Susan. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries 7-0. We are adjourned.
Nice.